Hey, Kurt, will she do it?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting of the County Commissioners to order. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could just for a second, everybody remain standing for a moment of silence. We've had one of our attorneys, Mr. Chris Drummond, unexpectedly passed away recently. If we could keep him and his family in our prayers. Thank you very much. Today is legislative day, and time is always allotted at the end of each meeting for the commissioners to receive comments from the public. I got a public notice here I have to read, so bear with me just for a second. This is Code Home Rule Bill number 3-2024, introduced by Ronald H. Fithian, President of the Board of County Commissioners for Kent County, Maryland. An act concerning Chapter 152 taxation, Article 3, hotel rental tax, for the purpose of ensuring equal treatment of all transient lodging, including short-term rentals, by repealing Chapter 152 taxation, Article 3, hotel rental tax, and reenacting with amendments Chapter 152 taxation, Article 3, short-term rental tax herein. A hearing will be held on March the 26th, 2024 at 10:00 a.m. in the Commissioner's Hearing Room, R. Clayton Mitchell, Jr., Kent County Government Center, 400 High Street, Chestertown, Maryland. The agenda for the meeting will be published online 24 hours in advance of the meeting. A complete copy of the proposed legislative bill is available in the Commissioner's office, 400 High Street, Chestertown, Maryland, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and on the county's website at www.kentcounty.com/commissioners/draft legislation by orders of the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland. Sandra M. Blackston, Clerk, published in the Kent County News on 3/7/24 and 3/14/24. All right. Now we have a couple consent items here we can take care of real quick. I got the regular session minutes dated March the 12th, 2024, and liquor minutes dated March 12th, 2024. And I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Now we have three special Class C license applications. One is the Kent Soil and Water Conservation District. They're applying for a beer, wine, and liquor license dated April 5th, 2024. And then the Sultana Education Foundation dated April, it's going to be held April through October of 2024. And we have a Dogwood Festival of Galena Incorporated applying for a beer, wine, and liquor license for May the 11th, 2024. Now, being as these are alcoholic beverage applications, they're in need of a public hearing, and we will allow tonight to be that public hearing. So anyone in the audience that would like to comment on either of the applications, please feel free to do so at this time. There being no comment, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion doing one of these at a time, so there's no confusion. The first one, I'd like to make a motion to approve Special Class C per diem liquor license application for Kent Sewell and Woodard Conservation District.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have the Sultana Education Foundation.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the 6 Special Class C liquor license applications for the Sultana Education Foundation.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
And the third one, as soon as my computer comes up, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Special Class C per diem liquor license application for the Dogwood Festival of Galena Incorporated.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. First up, we have Ms. Jillian Coleman, Director of Parks and Recreation, and she's here to talk about junior wrestling. Junior wrestling coaches recognition. And I just want to say, most of the time when we have this many people in our meeting, we've done something wrong, but hopefully that's not the case today.
We don't want to make this group angry.
No, they're the last ones we want to make angry.
Yes, good evening. This evening, I'm here to honor our wrestling coaches who spent, I tried to figure out like how many actual hours you guys spent in a season. And that's like practice, that's wrestling tournaments every weekend, that's probably phone calls to each other about what you're going to practice. And I don't even know if I came close, but it's well over like 800 hours in just that little bit of time. I could be off a little bit, but I was giving you guys at least 8 to 10 hours per tournament day. It could be a little longer with that, but these guys spend a lot of time with these kids developing them. So tonight we're here to honor them. The county commissioners and Kent County Parks and Rec wish to acknowledge the volunteer wrestling coaches for their crucial role in nurturing and guiding our aspiring athletes. Their unwavering dedication, passion, and commitment to the sport are truly commendable. We are grateful for the selfless time and effort they invest in helping our youth enhance their skills and achieve their ambition. The success of the Kent County Parks and Recreation Junior Wrestling Program is indebted to each one of you. These coaches not only impart wrestling techniques, but also serve as mentors and role models, instilling values like discipline, perseverance, and teamwork that extends beyond the wrestling mat to enrich the wrestlers' lives. The commissioners extend their heartfelt thanks to the volunteer coaches for their hard work, patience, and steadfast support. Their positive influence on the athletes is unmeasurable, making a real impact. Now I'll pass it on to the county commissioners for the presentations of the certificates of appreciation.
Well, thank you, Jill, and I'll read one of them aloud, and they're all the same, so we'll read one aloud and then we'll hand them out. And it reads, Certificate of Recognition. This is proudly presented to, in this case, Hannah Beatley, is hereby recognized for volunteering as a wrestling coach. Volunteering is a selfless and admirable commitment that deserves recognition and appreciation. Your dedication to mentoring and guiding young athletes goes beyond the hours spent on the mat. You're shaping their character, instilling values of discipline, teamwork, and perseverance that will stay with them for a lifetime. Your passion for the sport and your willingness to invest your time and energy into the growth and development of these young athletes is truly commendable. The Kent County Commissioners thank you for your invaluable contributions as a volunteer coach for the Kent County Parks and Recreation Junior Wrestling Program, signed to County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, Member, John F. Price, Member, dated March 19th, 2024. So if I could have you, maybe I'll read a name and they can, they can come forward and we'll pass them out. And what we generally do when we have something like this is we stand in front of that quilt over there as kind of the backdrop and get a picture. But it looks like to me that's gonna be undoable tonight. Maybe if you want, we'll take a time and we'll go out and have one in front of the building or something, if that would work. So we could get, we'll try that. As I stated, Hannah Beatley. We'll make sure she gets it. Arthur Kaler. Jacob Kerwin. Michael Mensch.
Close so we can get a picture of all together.
Michael, this, okay. Michael Menifee. Joseph Milburn. Samantha Reed. And it's, I think it's pronounced Kalani Rickard. Brian Schaefer. Michael Schramm. Russell Smith. Kristen Yanaitis. Donald Yerke. And last but not least, Dennis Staples.
Yes.
Can everybody get up here for a group picture with the commissioners, please?
We can do that. What, correct me if I'm, 67 wrestlers was what I think I was
No,
told.
76 wrestlers.
76 wrestlers. I had to write letters just wrong order.
It's probably because of him.
Huh? I didn't hear you, sweetie.
I'm just.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Stand up to get the commissioners.
I am, Mooney.
Bill, here's the other ones. The ones that weren't able to make it, we'll make sure that they get them. And again, let us thank you all for what you do.
Absolutely.
Very good. Okay, that concludes that ceremony. We'll move on now. Ms. Carol Nyman.
Should I sit here?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Good.
Ms. Carroll is with the Community Relations Liaison of Shrewsbury Church. She's here to talk about the homelessness and the community needs.
Thank you so much I haven't been before you in 3 years. I'm supposed to be retired and I'm not, but anyway, thank you for your time.
you.
Since January of 2021, should I wait a little or? Okay. Shrewsbury has been partnering with a lot of organizations to try to help the homeless. And back then, there was COVID, and you gentlemen gave us $5,000 once, twice, and the town gave us $5,000. So we had $15,000. And then another bunch of individuals came up with $10,000, $5,000, $1,500. So we garnered $30,000. But since that time, at the end of 2023, we spent $250,000 on the problem of homelessness. And though it was well spent and we saved many lives and we helped people, we are actually at this point in time sadly moving backwards. Of the 12 families we helped at the Driftwood Motel that were housed for almost a year, only 2 are currently successfully placed in permanent situations that don't require ongoing help. 2 more that were successfully placed in Section 8 housing are out as of January 1st, and the end of this month, both homes are being sold by the owners, so they no longer are in Section 8 for rental. The 2 people we rescued in the breezeway of Dunkin' Donuts, Abia and Mark is in a nursing home, having had his toes amputated because of frostbite. Abia is in this room, and he is in a sleeping cart, thanks to the generosity of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who is letting us use their lot. They've provided electricity and a porta potty, and it's really been wonderful. But I can't, as I come before you, I want you to think about, are those success stories? And in my way of thinking, they're not. I've tried to retire several times from what has become my passion. And it's 30 hours a week and 300 miles a week and 33,000 miles last year on my car. And there's no solution in sight. I sent you on February 23rd the article from the Attractions magazine. And it did take Talbot County 12 years to mount a successful homeless program. I don't think we've lost 3 years. I don't think we have that kind of time. And though there are needs for a food distribution center, a bus to Rock Hall on weekends, the biggest need right now is a building. When the ARPA funds were distributed, we had formed the Kent County Coalition for the Homeless, and that was under the presidency of Thad Bench through Chesapeake Charities. Their president is Linda Kohler. They walked the streets of this community for 1 year. They were unable to find a building to rent, a lot to build, or a building to buy. At that point, we were able to purchase a trailer from a farmer where the hunter had died. That was restored at the high school through the generosity of our church. And that trailer, Pastor Henry Sabetti and myself, we combed the county for 3 months, and we were unable to find a location for the trailer and had to give it away. So there's money down the drain. At this point in time, we need a building. We had I don't know if any of you gentlemen were at the release of the documentary film Rethinking Poverty on January 12th at the Public Library. That was funded by a private donation of $5,000 by a community individual. It's going to the governor's office. But Father Henry partnered with John Queen to launch the Empath program, but the program can't be launched without a building. And what I have found in this work is that every single person, old, young, children, grandparent, whatever, you cannot move them from homelessness to a house and think all is well. And we have done that, and we have failed because the wraparound services that they need, financial counseling, mental health counseling, addiction counseling, transportation, food, unless they're provided with wraparound services, a year later, almost all the individuals that we so kindly helped, they're back out. They're couch surfing, a father and 2 children living in a barn with no indoor plumbing. What should become apparent from these stories is that we really are in a crisis. And we can ignore that the crisis exists, but it's not going to go away because every other community is struggling with the same thing. And I'm here to just say we should be looking at some movement toward solutions. And so the big ask is that the ask of you is that we help us find a building. We need a building with a managing partner organization. That could be the Red Cross, that could be the Salvation Army, it could be the United Way or something else, but we need a year-round shelter. It is wonderful that the Samaritan Shelter provides shelter for 3 months, but they don't provide services after that. So the same people that are in the shelter, our church delivered meals last Wednesday, and we delivered a whole St. Patrick's Day dinner to the shelter. There were only 3 individuals there. Where are the rest of them? They can't get there. They have impediments to being accepted. And so the shelter is working, but it's working for a few, not a lot. I guess like the man, I'm using the analogy of the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz who needed a heart. We don't need a heart, we need a building from which to operate, from which to do counseling, job training, financial management. We have a lot of volunteers that are willing to do that. It just doesn't exist. We've exhausted our resources in terms of this little church of 100 members went through $250,000. Now, it didn't all come from that church, but I can document that's how much we spent. And that would buy a lot. It would buy a building and a lot. And like the animal shelter, when they were going to build the animal shelter, they mounted a fundraising campaign. Well, we can't mount a fundraising campaign because what are we mounting it for? I can no longer justify, and I will not justify, sending people to the Driftwood Motel or the Courtyard at $450 a week. And that's if paid in advance. It's $480 a week. So that's $1,800 a month. That rents a 3-bedroom house. In the last year, despite everyone's efforts, I have found one house, private rental, for a family with a disabled child at $1,500. The only reason they're able to afford that is because they have 3 adults and they have a child with disability income. And that's in the College Heights neighborhood. That's it. Haven't been able to find one other apartment or house. There are Section 8 places here, but their waiting lists are closed. So when I put down to you about the transportation to Rock Hall, Brittany Bay has a few openings, but they've closed one whole building for renovation. So it's going to be 2 years before Brittany Bay has openings. And then, again, we run into transportation. People can't get to Rock Hall because from Friday, 6 o'clock, to Monday morning at 8 o'clock, there is no bus to Rock Hall. And that limits not only that for the people that live there, but people that could rent in Rock Hall and work in other parts of Kent County. I guess that everyone runs into this problem of not in my backyard, and the Maneris ran into that last night with their attempt to have expanded outdoor recreation by the landowners out there on Legion Road. So we're not alone. But if we don't act, our acceptance of the status quo will set us back for years to come. And as you ponder what you might do or might help us do you want Kent County to be known as a county of elitists, which it is? I'm probably one of them. Except I travel in one day from the Driftwood to the country club. And the contrast is very difficult to navigate. And so if you want to become inclusionist, that's what you should aspire to become. Because I have had a deposit, I'm just saying this personally, on a retirement community for 3 years. Every year I'm asked by my children why I'm not there. And I'm not there because there's no solutions on this homeless problem. And for whatever reason this has been put in front of me, I can't leave here without some solution on the horizon. Whether it be looking to build more Section 8 housing or getting us a building to operate programs. My life has been changed by the people I have met one-on-one. The homeless people, the couch surfing people, the car sleeping people, the whatever, all the people. I have been changed, and I have been changed for the better. But I feel on my path to senior citizenhood, which I'm entrenched in right now, that I want to give back to my community. And for whatever reason, this issue has become paramount to what I'd like to do something about. So, what we've done is admirable. What you've helped us do is admirable. But there is nothing permanent on the horizon right now. And we are losing quality people that really would enrich our economy. Were they able to stay here and work here and live here? And so that's sort of it. I just hope that you look like I do towards some type of solution or assistance in getting us a building. That's pretty much Yeah, I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, but that's where I am. So, thank you.
I just have a couple of questions. if
Sure.
you Don't mind.
Sure.
The homeless population in our county. Do we have a number of how many homeless folks we have?
The estimate is 100. I'm currently working with active files on 37. And the interesting dynamic of that is split evenly down racial lines. 19 white folks and 17 African-American folks. When I talked about the father with the 2 children in a barn, he was Hispanic. He has since found a place to live. So, but the estimate is actively 100. I'm getting that from calls. I've recently changed my voicemail because it was ringing, till midnight. So I don't take the calls anymore, but Pastor Henry and John Queen are taking the calls since their partnership was formed on January 12th. And so they're giving me numbers.
So not that it really makes a whole lot of difference. If you're homeless, you're homeless. But I'm just wondering, where are these folks coming from? Are they coming from within our county? Or are they coming from other jurisdictions, or if you know?
All the people that I'm working with have come from inside Kent County. The 37 that I have active files on. As far as I have not encountered anyone in my work that was from outside Kent County. Now, one family had a wonderful house out near the high school, and they were taking care of 2 grandchildren of their son had problems with drugs. And that man decided to sell the Section 8 house. It took them 4 months to find a place. And her words were, now we're in a shack in Queen Anne County. And the mother will not let them take care of the grandchildren were in Kent County schools. And they were doing very well. We met them when they were 4 and 5, and now they're 9 and 10. But they're no longer in Kent County.
I would just add to that, that its public school system keeps track of homelessness data, and they count it as couch surfing and literally homeless, and their average is around 90 to 120 students every year experience homelessness at some point during the school year.
Well, that's obviously that's a large number, and it's something to take seriously. It's very commendable, Ms. Carroll, what you've done, and I was here when you come in 2 or 3 years ago.
It was 3 years, yeah, it was
Yeah.
February of 21.
Yeah. As I think you're a testament that it's not an easy solution. I mean, you've worked diligently for 3 years, and it's been a tough, and here you're admitting that you're kind of going backwards after all your work that you've put into it. I think that goes to show you how big of a problem it can be. I will point out, and listen, what I'm going to say is not the answer, I know, but years ago, there was a series of churches that used to take turns housing the homeless. One church would do it for a week or two, and the next church did it for a week or two here. And I remember them coming in and talking about that. And right after you all come in that time, and we put up some money to have them
They were up
housed
at
at
the-
the Driftwood.
Yeah,
The church across the bridge, right across the bridge.
Seventh-day, the Nazarene, Church of the Nazarene.
They come in and they had a little different take on the situation, because they said they were housing them,
Yeah.
those same people
Uh-huh.
that we put up at the Driftwood, and almost a little bit to, like, maybe scolding us a little bit for taking those, for doing it that way when they thought they were doing it better at that church or something. You remember,
I do. They were worried about the head count because the less head count, the less funding they would get for the following year.
but,
And they work with DSS.
but to, to get to the bottom line is, as we pointed out, you've made it, you've found that it's not easy to find a solution. And if you've been looking for 2 or 3 years to try to figure it out, I mean, I appreciate you making us aware of it, and we can certainly try to find something or keep our eyes open, but we're talking about a difficult problem, unfortunately. But thank you for making us aware of it, and we'll certainly keep that in the back of our minds. And the housing problem in Kent County,
National.
it's not even just just the homeless.
No, it's just,
My wife's in the real estate business. She says, in Rock Hall, and she says, every week, there's 2 or 3 people come in, is there anything for rent? We
Yeah.
need to go, and it's just, housing is a terrible problem.
Yeah.
And you talk about affordable housing, well, I'm not even sure I know what that is
I
anymore.
don't either.
Because the price of stuff,
Yeah.
it's a tough problem, and we sympathize with you, and we will talk to some of our people and see what we can put together, but as you pointed out, it is a serious problem to try to solve,
Well,
long-term.
No.
I mean, we can put them, you can
Yeah.
put somebody up for a week. It's like the old saying, you give somebody a fish and he can eat for the night. You teach them to fish and they can eat for the rest of their life, if you,
right.
it's a tough thing to
It's
try
a
to
tough
get
thing.
your hands around.
Well, and what we have found, to add to your comments, what we have found is putting someone in a room. Yes, they have the roof over their head, they have a bed, they have a refrigerator. That doesn't solve the
That's not
problem,
the answer.
because almost all the families need wraparound services. I'm going to use, Abby, for an example, who is now in the cart. Abby has recently received funding for an apartment, okay? After 2 years. This is wonderful, right? Can we find an apartment? Nope.
Right.
Went to a trailer park the other day and they said, oh, Miss Carroll, it's not good place over
Right.
here. So, we can't find a place even if we wanted to. And Abby, for example, as a couple of our families have services provided by mobile wellness, provided by counselors. They have those services already in place. And we, there you are. Oh, there you are. I didn't know you moved up to the front.
And I do know that we have places like, I know out to Memory's Dream, and
Yes.
there's Seventh-day Adventist Church in
Right.
Rock Hall. They give food away every week, I mean, but that doesn't, that
Doesn't help. And the access to the food banks is really a problem. We tried to get that building at the end of the Driftwood lot. It's a little white building, and it's owned by John Maselag, who I personally know from the Rock Hall Yacht Club.
Right.
And worked with him for a year and couldn't get that building to rent, to buy, whatever, so that the people in the motel. But the other part is the motel. Back when we spoke 3 years ago, was $320 a week. Try $480 a week.
Yeah.
So people go in for a few days, they have some money, and then they have to move out. And then they go in for 3 more days, and then they have to, and
Listen, as hard as you have worked at it for 2 or 3 years, to come in here and say you're going backwards, that speaks volumes of how difficult it is to
It's a
figure an
difficult
answer,
situation.
to get an answer for it.
yeah. But we just felt with the building, which we are willing to mount matching funds, mount a fundraising campaign. There are several individuals have come forward and said, can we just give you money? I can't accept, me personally, I can't accept money if I can't tell the people what the money is for. And right now, the money has to be for a building. That's it. Without that, we're stuck.
Well,
We can cook food, we can deliver we can do all these little things. But without a building, we cannot operate an entity for the homeless with wraparound services so they can move along a continuum toward self-sufficiency. Putting them in a motel or a hotel is not the answer.
No.
No. But, I mean, I'm so grateful for your time and,
Well, we're grateful for the effort that you've given
Thank you.
and the continuing work in this area, and thanks for bringing it to our attention, and we will talk about it and see if there's some help we can give, but as we
Well-
all agree, it's a difficult problem. Thank goodness that we're past the worst of the winter, because
Yes,
when you
that's-
come to us 2 or 3 years ago,
oh, it was 20
it was
degrees.
cold, and we felt the necessity of
Right.
doing something immediately to get them out of that weather, and we
Yeah.
did, and
Yeah, you
I
did.
don't regret that, but
No.
that doesn't go on forever. You can't do that forever, really. You gotta, I think you're right in what you're saying. It's just, it's not an easy solution out there.
No, I realize that, but, if I didn't let you know, you might think everything's going along just fine, and
Oh, I
it's
hear
kind
you.
of not.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank everybody who came on behalf of this issue. There were several people, especially Obs and Sheila, oh my God, and Vic. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rosemary Granilla is the Director of Kent County Local Management Board.
Good evening, how are you?
Good.
Do I get my chart, or they can see my chart?
We're here, your first one is FY 2025 Children's Cabinet Interagency Application.
So this is, it's not very legible there. This is the time of year where we submit our proposal for what we plan to do with the Kent County Local Management Board with our funds from the state that come from the Children's Cabinet Interagency Fund. And now we have a Governor's Office of Children as well to help administer those. And so this is a copy of our proposal and our tentative plans for next year and the budget that accompanies that. And so I am asking for your approval and signature and initials. They want us to initial all the pages, it's very important, of the certified assurances and the anti-lobbying section of the application. And then in June, we will have a contract to actually move forward with this for FY '25.
Any questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for submission to the Governor's Office for Children.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Pete Landon. Police Accountability Board, Accountability Officer Consultant Contract.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm here for a really quick issue. You have a contract before you that needs to be ratified. The Police Accountability Board consultant has been here. He's here today. He'll be here tomorrow. And I just want to get things moving so we can move on from here. I've been searching for someone since July 1st.
And we have a name, so
You have everything before you, yes?
yes. So,
So I'd like to make a motion to accept and sign the contract between Kent County and the person that we selected for the Police Accountability Board Accountability Officer Consultant position.
Second.
got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Jamie Williams is our Economic Tourism Development Director. Got 3 items for us today.
3 easy ones. Good evening. The first thing that you have before you is a letter of support that was requested from the Maryland Department of Transportation, requesting funding for FY25 through congressional spending request. So you have a copy, like an overview of the project for the upgrades to the rail, and it's the rail, that's the Maryland and Delaware rail that comes from in Queen Anne's County into Kent County and serves several of our local businesses. And you have a draft letter of support for consideration and signature.
Any questions?
So I'd like to make a motion to approve and sign the letter of support for the Maryland Department of Transportation's funding request for FY25, enhancing Eastern Shore Freight Rail Growth and Reliability Project.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next thing I have before you is for WKHS, which is the Student Public Radio. They're celebrating their 50th year on air this year, and they will be having a live community concert in May of 2024. So it's going to be the WKHS Tune Fest. It's a music concert that will have food trucks, station tours, and past WKHS alumni, both students and instructors, and dating back to 1974. So we have some guests with us here today, but before we bring them up, I do want to mention a couple of things about WKHS. They originally signed on the air at 12 noon on March 28, 1974. They were the first station manager was James Hammond, and the station engineer dates back to 1989. It's the only high school radio station on the FM dial in the state of Maryland. So we have a very unique asset here in Kent County. So we have some members from Chris Singleton, who is the station manager, and then some other folks are here with him as well.
Introduce Mr. Ken Collins, he's our sponsor manager.
Yeah.
Acknowledge Dr. Karen Couch, our superintendent. Tom Porter, our CTE coordinator. Mr. Dan DeVillio, who's our communication specialist.
Very good. I have or the county has put together a certificate of recognition, and it reads, "This is to certify that WKHS 90.5 FM is hereby recognized for 50 years of student public radio at Kent County High School. WKHS originally signed on the air at noon on March the 28th, 1974, with the first station manager, James Hammond. There have been 9 station managers, instructors over the past 50 years. 3 have been former WKHS students. WKHS is the only radio station on the FM dial in the state of Maryland, providing a unique opportunity for Kent County students. There are 15,000 radio stations nationwide, about 200 licensed to high schools, and about 50% have an academic pathway offering. At 17,500 watts, WKHS is one of the handful of high-power, high school radio stations in the entire country. There have been hundreds of students who have completed the broadcasting program over the last 50 years. Many have advanced to careers in the industry or similar, sales, marketing, public speaking, etc. In 1987, WKHS expanded its operational day beyond the KCHS academic hours to include evening adult volunteers, and in 1992 formed a partnership with the University of Pennsylvania, WXPN Radio, which has enabled WKHS to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year-round. Kent County Public Schools was able to renovate the WKHS studios in 2018 and replace the FM transmitter equipment in 2022 with donated funding directly from listeners and local businesses. Signed, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, Member, John F. Price, Member, dated March the 19th, 2024, and it's their privilege to present you all with this certificate of appreciation and recognition. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Keep up the good work for another, you got another 20 in you, sure.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you for all your support. You guys have been
Nice to see you all again.
Next point. Next point.
So I will mention they're still taking sponsorships for the Food Fest, correct?
Still
Still
taking
taking sponsorships from the
Tickets are still
community.
available.
So if anybody would like to sponsor,
Very
Great.
good.
thank you. The next item before you is also a letter of support. This is for the Chesapeake Country Scenic Byway Alliance Letter of Support. So this is in partnership with the Maryland Heritage Area and Gail Owings Group with the Eastern Shore Heritage, Inc. We have 2 representatives on the Eastern Shore Heritage Board, and that is Shallon as the tourism manager, but also Carla from planning and zoning. So lots of input from the county when it comes to projects of this nature. This is for a grant, and this is for a letter of support to apply for that grant to the, I gotta get this straight. This Tri-County Council is going to be actually sponsoring the grant, but this is for federal funding to support the implementation of the plan that was developed for interpretation. So the letter
Any questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and sign a letter of support for the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, Chesapeake County Scenic Byway Alliance Grant Application.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have our Public Works Director, Dan Matson, to talk about floating solar panels.
Thank you, and with me here today is Ned Hornifer, thank you, from Third Pillar Solar. So Ned had reached out about a month ago with an interest in an alternate, or an additional utilization, I'll call it, of the wastewater lagoons at the Wharton Wastewater Treatment Plant. He can certainly get into more details, but the interest of Third Pillar is to potentially lease that area for a solar system that they would own and operate. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ned to provide you with some more information about the proposal for our consideration.
Absolutely. And we prepared a presentation for you all here today. In the interest of time, we can move through it fairly quickly. We don't need to get into the technical weeds unless you'd like to. I'm happy to answer any questions. But Third Pillar Solar, we are a solar development company that specializes in developing, owning, and operating floating solar. The reason why we build floating solar is that we've recognized that many other solar developers out there do not practice responsible land use. They look for the cheapest, flattest, most open land possible, which is typically high-value agricultural land. And we've seen the impact that unbridled solar development has had on communities. It's a viewshed concern, and it's also a land productivity concern. So we look to build solar farms on inland man-made water bodies that have no recreational access and no public benefit to that surface area. We specialize primarily in doing wastewater treatment ponds and sand and gravel pits. That probably makes up 80% of the projects that we do. And we are active in solar markets across the U.S., but primarily in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. More close to home, we're currently working with the town of Hurlock, also working with the town of Chestertown for their wastewater treatment lagoons, as well as the town of Denton and the town of Preston. So there's considerable precedent for these projects, despite the fact that relatively few of them have been deployed in the U.S. to date. That's the other reason that we have, as a group of people who have spent a long time building renewable energy projects of all shapes and sizes, we've come together to build floating solar because we've seen over 2,500 megawatts, 2,500 megawatts of projects deployed globally, while there have been less than 30 megawatts of projects deployed here in the U.S. So we see this drastic imbalance between how this technology is being adopted primarily in Asia and Europe versus here in the U.S. If we want to jump ahead one slide, this is probably the one that will be most interesting and substantive for the commissioners. This is the Wharton treatment plant and the lagoons. And as you can see from this layout, the darker shaded areas on top are our proposed solar panels. It would be a 4.66 megawatt DC array that would cover the majority of those lagoons. The major advantage we see, in addition to the intelligent utilization of space, is that it would significantly reduce the algae growth that takes place in these ponds. The panels would shade and cool the ponds so that algae would not be able to grow. But at the same time, the panels are sitting on HDPE plastic food-grade floats that keep them up above the water, so there is enough space for evaporation to take place from under the panels. Wind can get under there, and water can still evaporate out, as that is a key aspect of these lagoons. But it would reduce algae growth and again, provide revenue for the county in terms of the lease.
My first questions would just be, if it helps cut down on the algae and these lagoons and stuff, but does it get in how about, does it interfere with the operation in any way? Like, what do you anchor? The lagoons obviously have liners in them. You can't be drilling holes through the liners and stuff, so there's got to be some way of securing it, and I'm just curious about that.
And we did discuss the anchoring, in which I'll let Ned speak to. But as far as regular maintenance of the lagoons, I would say our concerns are relatively small. They were recently dredged for the second time, I think, in 50 years, off the top of my head.
So that was one of my next questions. So when you use that press and you take the sludge out of those lagoons, that couldn't take place until after the contract run out on that solar array?
Yes, that's a good question. The dredging is the primary use conflict that we see with wastewater treatment lagoons, and there's different strategies in order to reduce the silt. Some experts that we've worked with have speculated that with the amount of algae growth cut down, that makes a significant difference, extending the time frame out. There's also ways that you could dredge around the perimeter of these. And Yes, and to directly answer your question about anchoring, we have a few different strategies in order to minimize the impact. What we would look to do on ponds like this, which have a clay liner, would be to use gravity anchors, simple dead weight anchors, rather than using helical piles. And we would likely do that as have those sitting on the bottom rather than bank anchoring, which is another strategy, because that might interfere with the mowing operations that would take place around there. So we, again, unlike many other solar developers that expect their project site to be completely within their domain, we recognize that any water body that we're going to work on will have a primary use or purpose. And it's important that the first and foremost, that the plant operates as it needs to and stays in compliance with its MDE permits. And so we have this specifically carved out in the lease documents that we've worked through with other municipalities to recognize that we are not and will never be the primary use of these lagoons, and that is the risk that we take as the project developers and long-term owners. If there were anything to happen to the lagoons, if there was a bank that failed or any work that needed to be done where the solar panels interfered, it would be our responsibility at our cost to remove all of those panels and wait until the solution is found and the problem is fixed with those lagoons.
A third pillar of solar, who are the owners and where are the owners?
That's a great question. We are primarily owned, 80% owned by a Danish private equity fund called Glentra Capital.
Okay.
And Glentra themselves are primarily owned by a $100 billion fund called Novo Holdings, which is the investment arm of the pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk, which you may know of from their insulin, Ozempic, Wegovy. They are a very well-known drug maker in Europe and becoming more so in the U.S.
You're saying that this project would be, what did you say here, 4.6 megawatts?
4.66 megawatts DC.
Okay. What is a what is a megawatt? I mean, give me a ballpark. What would it power? I mean, would that power Chestertown? Would it power?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay. And that gets to who would be the off-takers or the subscribers to this project. So that 4.66 megawatts would probably power somewhere in the range of the entire town of Chestertown, or somewhere in the range of 400 to 500 homes in the area. And even more precisely, so the intention for this is that we would lease the space on the lagoons, and this project would be what's called a community solar project. This is a new program that's been set up by the state of Maryland that is launching in January of next year. The Maryland PSC is currently working on finalizing the program. And what we would do is, once the project is going to construction, we would open it up for any customer of Delmarva Power to opt into the project and automatically receive a 10% discount on their bill in the form of bill credits. As the project owner, we're working with the Maryland PSC to allow us to be able to offer bigger discounts. For instance, we could offer call it a 12% discount to any resident of Kent County in recognition that it is on, public property, and we would be able to extend a similar additional discount to any of the county's electric accounts with Delmarva Power as well.
So Delmarva Power would be the customer.
Delmarva Power will be required to purchase the electricity off of that site. And then we are required to open up the subscriptions to this project to any of their customers.
Gotcha.
When I was town manager of Rock Hall, we put one of the first solar arrays down there on land. Mm-hmm. But they had it was a building there that had to control by, I guess, wherever it converted the sunlight into whatever it does. I have no clue, but it was a place where a lot of the machinery or their equipment or switches, whatever was in whatever they had in there. Would you need additional space on land to house something like that?
Yep, that's a great question. We would need a concrete pad about twice the size of this table that would host the transformer and the inverters. That's specifically the equipment and the electric meter there. It's again a relatively small footprint given that the vast majority of the project will be out on the lagoons. But we'd work closely with the Department of Public Works to identify the best location there on the site that's completely out of the way of the operations.
Very good.
You've done some of these projects. What have been the negative sides of this, and you might be a little reluctant to say that.
No,
but-
I think that's a very fair question. Like all development, it has to be done responsibly.
Right.
We've seen projects be rejected that are in ecologically sensitive environments. We've seen it in everything from a reservoir that is run of river, where there's been concern about the flow of water through there. And this was a permitting concern, not a developer's concern. We've seen places where people have tried to build these in people's view sheds. It's not uncommon to have a drinking water reservoir that does not have public access, but will have houses around the outside where they regard that as a view worth preserving. And although these panels, from a view shed standpoint, are much more invisible, shall we say, than ground-mounted solar in an agricultural field.
Are they flat or are they angled?
They're on about a 12-degree tilt. But whereas the ground-mounted ones have, 6 to 8 feet of elevation off and a lot of steel racking, these are on very low-profile plastic floats, and the color of the panels reflects the color of the sky the same way that water does. So really the most visible parts of these projects are the boundary areas where you see a little strip of gray plastic. We've taken people to see projects up in New Jersey, and they've been less than 100 yards away and asked us where it is, and it's taken up more than half of a 40-acre water body that they were looking at. So remarkably invisible, but view shed is still a legitimate concern. And then the other major area of concern that we've seen, although we've been able to mitigate in the past, is the presence of foraging habitat or nests for raptors like bald eagles and ospreys. And there was another project up in New Jersey, one of my colleagues worked closely on. It's the largest one here in the U.S. on the Canoe Brook Reservoir, and there were eagles nesting on site there. And so the mitigation actions that were taken were to construct the project outside of nesting season. It was a construction period they expected would take 6 months. It ended up taking 2 years as a result of avoiding nesting season, but the project was still built and hasn't created any negative impacts for the eagles there.
About the floats that you talked about that these panels will be sitting on, will they get, do they need to be cleaned every year or two? There's a growth that grows on them that, as it become bothersome, do they become heavier because of the?
Not in any meaningful way. The only growth or weight load on top that presents any concern for us around the country are when you see large snow loads. We're building some projects in upstate New York where they can get lake effect snow. And in those cases, we're specifically working with the manufacturers to design more buoyant systems that essentially have more spacing between rows that increase the buoyancy. As far as algae growth on them, I mean, they're a food grade HDPE plastic, very similar to the floating docks that you've likely seen that you can drive a boat up onto. And I mean, I've visited projects that are 5 years old and 15 years old, and neither of those projects have presented any concern in terms of growth or maintenance. We will have people coming out to do biannual maintenance checks, primarily on the anchoring and mooring lines. That's the biggest point of concern, and we use a very advanced mooring technology that includes elastic housers so that these aren't drifting around on the ponds, bumping into the banks. They are set to be taut, and even as the water level raises and lowers, there's always an equal amount of tension on every anchor point, and these islands are not floating around.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Unless there's
Okay.
no, if you have any
There
more
will be,
questions.
just have one.
yeah, I'm sure there will be.
Fire suppression.
That's a great question, absolutely. That's a big concern for any solar developers, and that is really a land-based concern. Everything will be properly, electrically grounded out on the array, so there's really no risk of short circuiting or electrifying the water body, but there's nothing on the floats themselves that would catch fire in these cases. The concern that we have there will be the transformer. That's specifically when you hear about fires at solar farms, that's when you have transformer fires, and that is a concern for any land-based electric electrical equipment. That's part of the reason that we will set it on a concrete pad and fence it off with 3 strands of barbed wire so that people keep their distance from medium voltage electrical equipment. What I will say is that's not any different than the concerns for the existing electrical equipment that's on site at the water treatment plant today. We will have an operations center that you can reach 24/7 if there is a fire in our transformer. Not only will that set off automated alerts for our NOC, but then that's something that will be addressed on land, and that comes down to siting the transformer pad in a place where there's no chance of that fire propagating to anything else around.
Well,
I'm a little concerned about our local volunteer fire service here. They're all volunteer services. And I don't know for sure whether they have the capability of dealing with a fire that might have a plume with it that, could affect a lot of people and a lot of firemen.
I understand your concern, and before working in the solar industry, I worked in the lithium battery industry, where that is a very serious concern, and that is one that frankly for batteries, I think is a major concern and valid, because you can have what's called a thermal runaway event in a battery system, where if the correct fire suppression systems aren't in place, you have a fire that can easily get out of control, as you mentioned, with the plume. What happens in a transformer fire is that it immediately cuts off a switch, and so it depowers the transformer immediately, and it's a metal box that doesn't have other flammable materials in there once the charge is lost from it. So although it would be a critical failure for the plant that we would address as a high priority, it wouldn't pose the risk that you're referring to in terms of a plume of combustible gases or liquids that are in there. Even in many cases, given the proximity to sensitive water bodies, we use a bio-based lubricant that, again, is non-flammable. But even if we were to have a leak of the lubricant out of the transformer, that is a bio-based material that would completely biodegrade off, from the spillage. So I completely hear your concern, and I'm happy to provide more follow-up information to alleviate that concern, given that it's a volunteer fire department and we don't want them taking any unnecessary risks.
So to put that in a different, maybe a little bit simplified term, so I fully understand it. The difference between a fire that, such as Commissioner Price discussed, we see a lot in the news with the EV vehicles and the batteries quickly go and it's uncontrollable. You basically just need to let the thing burn out.
Yep.
There's no battery storage with this system. It would purely be the panels collecting solar energy, sending it to the transformer, which then directly to the power lines on Wharton Road there. There's no storage.
There's no
storage.
lithium batteries at all.
No, there will be no batteries associated with this project. And frankly, that was a concern from the town of Chestertown as well. We made that very clear to them that this project doesn't require batteries and we would have no incentive to add them. And frankly, they do pose a risk that we do not think is appropriate or acceptable in most cases.
did I hear you correctly? Just, nothing in that panel can burn?
The panel's made 98% out of glass.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is, if you get creative and bring some tools out there and rewire backs of panels, there are ways that maliciously somebody could form a short circuit that would immediately set off triggers, which would trip the plant offline. This is like, we're not talking in the realm of reality here. But as Dan said, the panel collects the electricity from the sun and immediately sends it out through the back of those panels. And unless you were to intentionally cross wires in a way that, with modern solar technology would be virtually impossible unless you knew what you were doing with malicious intent. And even in that case, you're limited to the 500 or 600 watts that are in one individual panel. So there is more of an electrocution concern for whomever would go out there to mess with the array than there is of it actually causing a fire and propagating.
Interesting.
And the project that you are showing here on the slide, if I'm reading it right, it says 10 acres.
Yep, that's about right.
So 10 acres of the actual surface are going to be covered with solar.
Yes, that's right. Generally speaking, especially with perfectly shaped ponds like these, our arrays will take up about 2 acres per megawatt.
And just for curiosity, and I have a reason for asking this question, but it's my own reason for asking. The town lagoons, there's 2 of them. There's one in the back and there's one out towards the front.
He's talking about.
Oh, the Chestertown ones,
In
yes,
Chestertown.
yes.
So what is the coverage going to be there as far as the lagoons go?
So it will likely be a larger project, although it will be determined by Delmarva how large of a project we're able to connect. And the intention is to use the lagoon in the front with probably about a 20% coverage ratio, given that size. Whereas these are more like a 60% coverage ratio, I would say.
Because you mentioned birds, ospreys and eagles and all this. We have a lot of Canadian geese that roost on those lagoons.
Absolutely.
And
And birders who appreciate that as a site to
they'll be
see.
sitting on top of them, I'm sure.
Believe it or not, they won't.
Really?
And this is something that we get a lot. And so the challenge that the geese and ducks have, any waterfowl, is that they need a runway to land. They need enough space to have a soft landing down into the water, into a field. Whereas with the 12-degree angle that these panels have, it would present a crash landing for them. Now, we think that they would like, in a perfect world, from the geese's perspective, they would love to be able to hop out of the water and use the access rows and then maybe climb up on the panels. That's obviously not something we're looking to have happen. And so a simple fishing line barrier around the outside is usually enough to keep waterfowl off the arrays. Seabirds can be a different challenge if we're talking about cormorants and gulls. I think there are other mitigation techniques that we can use, either, ultrasonic or otherwise, that would deter them from.
You can keep those cormorants out, then you better patent that.
It's certainly easier said than done. And in the worst case scenarios, we have technologies that we can deploy if we find that the panels are getting routinely soiled. We can install essentially a water pump system with a spray nozzle that hoses the panels down every night with apparently enough pressure to remove even the worst cormorant dropping. So thankfully we haven't had to go to that extent yet. But we're looking into that technology for a wide range of different circumstances as well.
So where is this project with Chestertown currently?
This one is in the early stages of approval as well. We've only started developing projects in Maryland in the last few months when we knew that, when we knew the rules in how the state was going to regulate this community solar program. Actually, we had one project behind the meter for a sand and gravel pit that is over near Goldsboro, but that one's on a longer development cycle because they're still setting up their operations. But other than that, all of these projects are in the very earliest stages of development.
Because at the town lagoon, there's already a pretty good sized solar field.
There is.
Back in the corner there.
That powers the majority of the town. And that's about, I think it's a 3 or 4 megawatt project. And from our discussions with them, they said they've got no need for additional power because that plant provides all of it. But then they still are supportive of this, given that it can be a benefit to the citizens.
I like that idea.
And to contextualize where we are with this right now, Mr. Horneffer had reached out to me and given me some basic information and included in this packet, along with, there's some case studies of successful projects they've listed in there. He also provided a draft lease agreement. I certainly, before pursuing anything, investing significant time from myself or our attorney in reviewing those documents, I wanted to bring it to your attention and have have you commissioners gain a good understanding of what's proposed. And again, some of the highlights are that this would be, all equipment would be owned and operated by Third Pillar Solar. They would not be selling us or the equipment for our use or pushing any maintenance responsibility onto the county. And one important point that wasn't mentioned was that included in the lease would be a decommissioning bond. A concern of mine I've seen with a lot of solar projects, after they get built, within a couple years, they may be sold to some other solar company, or it's been a somewhat transient industry initially, not necessarily with the floating, but solar in general. And there's a lot of turnover with ownership and things, and the lease would lock in Third Pillar, as well as provide the county the ability to, in the worst case scenario, decommission the panels out there.
So do we have an idea what the decommissioned cost is?
It would be somewhere in the range, and I'm giving very general numbers, but somewhere in the range of a few $100,000 most likely. But what we would do is commission a specific study for this project in this water body. It would also be informed by what the construction cost is, because essentially it's the cost to deconstruct and remove the panels. And so we would do that study before we begin construction. And we typically set aside the decommissioning bond from year 15 of the project, because it's understood that the useful life of this system will be 35 years. We're actually working to push that up to 40 years with our insurers and financing parties. But for the first 15 years, even if Third Pillar were to go belly up and no longer exist, in all likelihood, another owner or operator of these projects would come in and buy it, because they would see the value in what we had built. It's really in that years 15 to 30 where there's a likelihood that new technologies will exist at that point that devalue what is out there, and that's why the decommissioning bond is in place. With that said, if it would be of interest to the county to move up the time frame for us setting that decommissioning bond, we'd be happy to do that as well. I was just meeting with the town of Denton last night, and they requested that we bump that up to year 10, and we were happy to do that for them. So we would be glad to extend that same offer for Kent County.
So if I understand correctly what you just said, for the first, like in Denton's situation, for the first 10 years, there is no bond.
No bond in place for the first 10 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, if that's something where that leaves you with a sense of discomfort, I'd have to speak internally, but I think that we could get it approved to have that decommissioning bond set earlier.
Good to know.
Unless my colleagues have other questions, I would just suggest this for us, because it's all new, and you've done a great, outstanding job, in my opinion, of explaining your project, and I appreciate that. But we'd like to have, I'd like for us to have a little time to talk to Dan about it, give him a little extra time before we don't make a decision. Not going to make a decision tonight, but
of course
we appreciate what you've said and your ability to speak on the project, and we'll be in touch with you. How about that?
That sounds great.
He certainly seems to know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about this space, as I'm sure you can tell.
Comes across clear.
Thank you.
But,
Thank you
I
all
like
so
it
much for
being
your
on
time.
this space as well. I really do.
Dan, this hasn't got anything to do with this. We knew that this was coming up, Albert and I was talking about, I always wondered why nobody ever approached us about out there to landfill on that big hill. But I guess it's because you gotta be careful, because it's got a cap over top of it. You certainly can't penetrate that, because that's the whole idea of it, is keep water from going down into that rubble. But that talk about land, it's not worth much. I mean,
You are correct, and truthfully, there has been interest in that.
is that right?
And that's something I had discussed with the former director as well, when someone had reached out to me. There is in our opinion, significant concern with the cap that's on.
Puncturing
There's no
that.
concern with the cap as it exists today.
Right.
But much like retrofitting an old roof with solar panels, the point of the roof is not to have holes in it. So anytime you're punching holes in it,
Yeah, sure.
it's a maintenance concern. The same philosophy goes with the cap, and it would take a significant demonstration of the technology to protect that before we were interested.
Yeah. I kind of dawned on me after we were discussing why I thought, well, obviously, they don't want that cap to be
Yes.
damaged in any way. Well, thank you very much for coming in, and you'll be hearing from us.
Great, thank you all so much for the time.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Anything, I have nothing
Dave.
further on the agenda unless.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
I got one thing for you, Dan, before you leave. I got one thing for you, real quick. And we've had this discussion before. I would love for us to figure out how we can, these small guys, and you and I had this conversation one time. I can name you 3 or 4 in the Rock Hall area, and I know it must be more around, who are looked upon as commercial haulers. They're really nothing more than somebody with a pickup truck and a trailer, one or both, goes around to senior citizens who don't have the ability to throw an old stove or refrigerator or clean up, and they're hauling that to the dump. The trash is coming from Kent County, the people live in Kent County, and we have told some of them they can't come there. They gotta go to Ridgely. Wouldn't it be something just as simple as maybe charging them more? Or instead of, look, I can go there with a whole pickup truck and I'm gonna give 1 ticket. Maybe if these guys are coming on a regular basis, maybe they pay 2. I got a pretty big earful the other day because one of the boys down home was told, he went there with a load of stuff that he had got from some seniors' homes, and they were told they couldn't dump them. And I got quite an earful. So I'm just wondering if there's a simple way that these guys could sign up that, yeah, we're not, we're not your big commercial dumpster people or what, but we're providing a service in some communities that have a lot of older people that, quite frankly, aren't able to go to the dump with big appliances or large amounts of stuff. I was wondering if we could come up with an idea where, if they're willing to sign up, that they are these people that are gonna, I go to the dump, sometimes I don't, just my wife and I, we might not go for a couple weeks, I got cans we store it in, and no, but these guys, you probably see them somewhat on a regular basis, and that's what tips you off that they're not just hauling their trash to the dump. But the bottom line is the trash is coming from Kent County. If they were bringing it in from out of county, that's what we tried to stop.
Sure.
And we were successful, I think. You wouldn't hear me say a word. But when it's accumulated in Kent County and they're Kent County people, it just seems like to me we could come up with a issue where, okay, you want to do this, we're going to take your stuff, you sign your name down here, but this is what it's going to cost you. Instead of 1 ticket, it's 2 or 3, whatever we come up with. And then they know. They just don't like having to ride clear to Ridgely, which is back and forth, probably a couple-hour drive, and whatever they charge them over there. And I want people to be able to go to seniors and help them out. Clean their garage out, do what, you understand what I'm saying.
I completely understand, and in my little over a year with the county, I've heard many instances, anecdotally, of similar scenarios. And on the other side of the spectrum, we, in the last few months, have started to track the exact cost or revenue brought in via the current ticketing system, as well as the cost to dispose from our drop-off centers. And it's becoming clear on both sides of the spectrum that there are evolutions to our current charging system necessary.
Well, let me follow up on that with everything government does. Nothing government does turns a profit. If it
Absolutely.
did,
Absolutely.
private people would be doing it.
Yes.
We provide services that you can't make money out of.
Absolutely.
You don't make money out of detention centers. You don't make money out, I mean, we wouldn't want to do without them, but police officers don't make us money. They serve a real important purpose. But everything we as government do is, it costs us money. That's why no private person is doing it. So I understand that, you know, it costs us money to throw trash away. But maybe if we charge a little more or something for these people, we might solve their problem, keep it easy for seniors to have a young fellow come along and haul some stuff away for them.
I absolutely, and I completely agree that there is refinement to our current process needed. It's something that we are actively looking into.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Now, we have our county administrators got, well, it's underneath of it, it's a proclamation, and this
Correct.
poor gentleman, I'm sure is sitting there waiting for this proclamation. Are you here about the huh?
No.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw, Bill Blake was here. I know that's what he was here for. And that, I guess he got tired of waiting on us, which I don't blame him, but,
Well, you're gonna meet the gentleman in the back here in just a moment.
okay.
So more to follow on that.
You know, I know who it is now. I don't even have to. I apologize, but I thought, anyhow, when Bill Blake was here, I got thrown off a little bit. But we got a proclamation to read about the Vietnam War veterans.
Yes, there has been a proclamation that has been created for the Vietnam Veterans Day, and they have a celebration festival on March 29th. So Commissioner Price has that proclamation.
We will read it tonight, and then we will present it on that date.
And read it again, yeah.
Yes, and read it again.
So this is a proclamation from Kent County, Maryland, the Vietnam War Veterans Day, March 29th, 2024. Whereas Vietnam War Veterans Day is a day to honor those men and women who have served on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces anywhere in the world between November 1st, 1955 and May 15th, 1975. And whereas those veterans and their loved ones have made significant sacrifices on behalf of our nation and all its citizens in order to defend the principles of liberty and freedom on which our nation was founded. And whereas many of those men and women who served bravely and faithfully found themselves caught in divisive and polarizing debate over the war in Vietnam and were thus treated with disrespect and unserved abuse. And whereas while no words will ever be fully worth or worthy of their service, let us proclaim that it is never too late to pay tribute to those who answered the call of duty with courage and valor. And whereas of the names inscribed on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., there are 5 Kent County names, we pledge that their ultimate sacrifice and sacrifices of their families will never be forgotten. Now, therefore, we, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, do hereby proclaim March 29th each year as Vietnam War Veterans Day in Kent County and request all citizens to observe this day as a day of remembrance of debt we owe to all those veterans and their families. Signed, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, Member, and John F. Price, Member. March 19th, 2024.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. And the Kent Soil and Water Conservation District has requested a recognition for the 2023 Cooperator of the Year Award recipients, which are Ron and Loretta Gale Durker of Blueberry Hill Farm LLC. And it is my understanding that Commissioner Nickerson will be presenting the recognition at their April 5th annual Cooperator Dinner event.
You want me to read it tonight, or?
That's your choice.
No, it's your choice.
No, go ahead.
This is, certificate of recognition. This is to certify that Ron and Loretta Gale Diker are hereby recognized as the 2023 Kent Soil and Water Conservation District Cooperator of the Year. The Kent Soil and Water Conservation District grants this honor to a producer or landowner who has gone above and beyond to improve conservation on their farm. This year, the hard work of Blueberry Hill Farm, LLC of Rock Hall, has earned this achievement. Kent County hereby recognizes that the conservation practices and good stewardship of soil and natural resources by Ron and Loretta Gale Diker and their family. We, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, are proud to recognize your efforts and dedication to the conservation in the farming community. Signed, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, Member, and John F. Price, Member.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. And the only other item that I have for you at this point in the agenda is that every year, when it's requested of us to have budgetary work sessions with the municipalities, we send a letter inviting all 5 of the municipalities to join us for that work session. Those letters have been sent, and the work session's date is April 9th.
Mr. Jim Miller, Director of Human Resources, up next.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Glad to see you're better.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Glad to be back. So I have one item for you this evening. I think you have all the details with you, but it's a request for a conditional offer of employment for a maintenance worker position. It was fully vetted by the department as well as the HR department, as well as Dan Mattson was one of the interviewers, and you have the details. I'll entertain any questions if you have them about this candidate or the process.
Be the same old question I always ask.
Yes, sir, I know.
There's some that are from close by, and this guy's working for our neighboring county, or Centerville now.
It turned out, and there was a pretty lengthy group of candidates to look at this time, and this individual, based on prior relevant experience and particularly as a utility tech elsewhere, made him the most desirable of the candidates, and that was unanimous of the interviewers.
And I don't want to talk about it tonight, but when I was looking at the minimum salary it doesn't look like it's much higher than it was before we had that discussion some
We haven't
months ago.
changed the range, but we've made great strides in bringing candidates in above the minimum based on what experience they're bringing to the table. This particular candidate's coming in about 700 hours above the minimum of the scale currently. And we're hoping this year to be looking at the ranges in general. So we're hoping to make even more strides.
And we approved, I'm not going to mention any names, but we approved a gentleman